Question 1. The review process indicates that during the recent Najah National University entrance examination, a proctor reported observing a candidate exhibiting behavior that could be interpreted as an attempt to cheat. The proctor has submitted a written report detailing the observations. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the university's admissions committee to ensure fairness and uphold academic integrity? Option A. Initiate a formal investigation into the alleged misconduct, gathering all relevant evidence and providing the candidate an opportunity to respond, in accordance with Najah National University's academic integrity policies. Option B. Consult general best practices for exam security from international educational bodies to determine the appropriate response. Option C. Defer the decision on this candidate's application until after the admission cycle is complete to avoid disrupting the current process. Option D. Immediately disqualify the candidate from the entrance examination based on the proctor's report to maintain the integrity of the process. The correct answer is A. Initiate a formal investigation into the alleged misconduct, gathering all relevant evidence and providing the candidate an opportunity to respond, in accordance with Najah National University's academic integrity policies. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's academic integrity standards with the practical realities of student support and the potential for academic misconduct. The entrance exam is a critical gatekeeper, and ensuring its fairness and validity is paramount. The pressure to admit a certain number of students, coupled with the need to uphold Najah National University's reputation, creates a complex decision-making environment. The correct approach involves a thorough and impartial investigation into the alleged irregularities, adhering strictly to Najah National University's established policies for academic integrity and entrance exam administration. This approach prioritizes fairness to all candidates, the integrity of the examination process, and the university's commitment to academic standards. It involves gathering evidence, providing the accused candidate an opportunity to respond, and making a decision based on established university regulations. This aligns with the university's responsibility to maintain a credible admissions process, as mandated by its internal governance and academic policies. An incorrect approach that involves immediate disqualification without a proper investigation fails to uphold the principles of natural justice and due process. It assumes guilt without evidence and can lead to unfair outcomes for students who may have valid explanations or be victims of circumstances beyond their control. This violates the university's implicit commitment to fairness and can damage its reputation. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the allegations due to time constraints or pressure to meet admission targets, directly compromises academic integrity. This undermines the credibility of the entrance exam and the university itself. It suggests a willingness to overlook potential misconduct for expediency, which is ethically unacceptable and contrary to the core mission of an academic institution. A further incorrect approach, which is to consult external, non-university specific guidelines without reference to Najah National University's own regulations, introduces irrelevant standards and potentially misinterprets the university's specific requirements. The university entrance exam is governed by its own internal framework, and any disciplinary or investigative process must be rooted in these specific rules and procedures. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Identifying the core issue, allegations of academic misconduct during an entrance exam. 2. Consulting relevant internal policies, reviewing Najah National University's specific regulations regarding academic integrity, examination procedures, and disciplinary actions. 3. Gathering objective evidence, collecting all available information related to the alleged irregularities. 4. Ensuring due process, providing the affected candidate with clear information about the allegations and an opportunity to present their case. 5. Impartial assessment, evaluating the evidence and the candidate's response against the university's established criteria. 6. Making a reasoned decision, applying the university's policies to reach a fair and consistent outcome. 7. Documenting the process, maintaining a clear record of all steps taken and decisions made. Question 2. What factors determine the appropriate conduct for an applicant during the Najah National University entrance exam, ensuring compliance with the university's specific regulatory framework? Option A. Adherence to the official Najah National University entrance exam regulations and guidelines. Option B. Application of general examination rules commonly observed in other academic institutions. Option C. Personal judgment regarding the most convenient interpretation of the exam's procedural requirements. Option D. Interpretation of exam rules based on informal discussions with peers and seniors. The correct answer is A. Adherence to the official and Najah National University entrance exam regulations and guidelines. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an applicant to demonstrate a nuanced understanding of the Najah National University's admission policies and the ethical considerations involved in academic integrity. The university's entrance exam is designed to assess not only academic knowledge, but also the applicant's adherence to established rules and principles. Misinterpreting or disregarding these policies can lead to disqualification and damage the applicant's reputation. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the Najah National University's official admission regulations and guidelines, specifically focusing on the section detailing prohibited action during examinations. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the university's stated rules and ensures that the applicant's actions are compliant with the established framework for the entrance exam. Adhering to these regulations is an ethical imperative, demonstrating respect for the examination process and the institution. An incorrect approach would be to assume that common exam practices from other institutions are applicable, without verifying them against a Najah National University-specific rules. This is ethically flawed because it disregards the explicit jurisdiction of the Najah National University's entrance exam and prioritizes assumptions over verified information, potentially leading to a violation of their specific regulations. Another incorrect approach would be to rely solely on peer advice or informal discussions about the exam. This is professionally unacceptable as it introduces a high risk of misinformation and deviates from the authoritative source of information, the university's official documentation. Ethical conduct in academic settings demands reliance on official guidelines. A further incorrect approach would be to interpret the exam rules in a way that is most convenient for the applicant, without considering the university's intent. This demonstrates a lack of integrity and a failure to uphold the principles of fairness and honesty that underpin academic assessments. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a systematic approach. First, identify the governing body and its specific regulations. Second, locate and meticulously read the official documentation pertaining to the relevant process, in this case, the entrance exam. Third, seek clarification from official university channels if any part of the regulations is unclear. Finally, act strictly in accordance with the verified regulations. Question 3. System analysis indicates that during the administration of the Najah National University entrance exam, an invigilator observes a candidate exhibiting behavior that strongly suggests they are attempting to cheat, such as discreetly looking at notes hidden in their sleeve. According to the regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines for this specific exam, what is the most appropriate immediate action for the invigilator to take? Option A. Confiscate the candidate's examination materials immediately without further consultation. Option B. Discreetly report the observed suspicious behavior to the designated invigilator or examination authority as per Najah National University's examination regulations. Option C. Ignore the suspicious behavior to avoid causing a scene and potentially upsetting other candidates. Option D. Publicly confront the candidate and demand an explanation for their actions. The correct answer is B. Discreetly report the observed suspicious behavior to the designated invigilator or examination authority as per Najah National University's examination regulations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic success and the university's commitment to academic integrity. The pressure to perform well on entrance exams can lead some students to seek unfair advantages. A university entrance exam administrator must navigate this situation with strict adherence to Najah National University's established regulations and ethical guidelines to ensure a fair and equitable testing environment for all candidates. The correct approach involves immediately and discreetly reporting the observed suspicious behavior to the designated invigilator or examination authority, as per Najah National University's examination regulations. This action upholds the principle of academic integrity, which is a cornerstone of any reputable educational institution. By following the established protocol, the administrator ensures that the university's rules are applied consistently and fairly, preventing any potential compromise of the exam's validity. This aligns with the ethical duty of an administrator to maintain a secure and honest examination process. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the suspicious behavior. This failure directly violates the administrator's responsibility to uphold the integrity of the examination process. By not acting, the administrator implicitly condones potential academic dishonesty, undermining the fairness of the exam for all other students, and violating an Najah National University's commitment to academic integrity. Another incorrect approach would be to confront the student directly and publicly. While seemingly proactive, this action could create unnecessary disruption, cause distress to the student and other candidates, and potentially escalate the situation without following the prescribed disciplinary procedures. University regulations typically outline specific steps for handling suspected misconduct, which usually involve discreet reporting and investigation rather than immediate public confrontation. This approach risks violating the student's privacy and due process rights as defined by university policy. A further incorrect approach would be to attempt to resolve the issue by confiscating the student's materials without proper authorization or documentation. This bypasses the established procedures for handling academic misconduct, which often require a formal report and investigation by a designated committee or authority. Such unauthorized action could lead to procedural errors, making any subsequent disciplinary action invalid and potentially exposing the university to challenges. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of a Najah National University's examination regulations and code of conduct. When faced with suspicious activity, the administrator should 1. Observe and document the behavior discreetly. 2. Immediately report the observation to the appropriate authority as per university policy. 3. Allow the designated authorities to handle the investigation and disciplinary process. This systematic approach ensures that actions are taken within the bounds of established rules, protecting the integrity of the examination and the rights of all involved. Question 4. The assessment process reveals that a group of prospective students preparing for the Najah National University entrance exam has been extensively sharing past exam papers and discussing specific problem-solving approaches for challenging questions. One student, concerned about the implications, is unsure whether this level of collaboration crosses the line into academic misconduct as defined by the university's entrance exam guidelines. Which of the following actions best reflects adherence to the university's regulatory framework for entrance examinations? Option A. Ceasing all discussion of past exam content and focusing solely on general subject matter review to avoid any potential misinterpretation of collaboration rules. Option B. Reporting the observed collaborative activities to the exam administrators, citing concerns about potential breaches of academic integrity, and seeking guidance on permissible study methods. Option C. Continuing to share and discuss specific problem-solving methods for past exam questions, as the intention is to improve understanding and not to directly share answers during the actual exam. Option D. Encouraging the group to continue their detailed discussions of past exam questions, arguing that such collaborative learning is beneficial and that the university should be more lenient with preparation methods. Correct answer is C. Continuing to share and discuss specific problem-solving methods for past exam questions, as the intention is to improve understanding and not to directly share answers during the actual exam. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge in academic integrity, the subtle line between collaborative learning and academic misconduct. Students often work together to understand complex concepts, but the boundary of permissible assistance can become blurred, especially under the pressure of entrance exams. This scenario requires careful judgment to distinguish between legitimate study habits and actions that undermine the fairness and validity of the examination. The correct approach involves recognizing that while collaboration on understanding course material is encouraged, submitting work that is not one's own or using unauthorized assistance during an exam constitutes academic dishonesty. This aligns with the core principles of academic integrity upheld by a Najah National University, which emphasizes individual effort and the accurate reflection of a student's knowledge and skills. Specifically, the university's regulations on academic misconduct, which are standard for entrance examinations, prohibit any form of cheating, plagiarism, or unauthorized collaboration during the assessment. Adhering to these regulations ensures a fair evaluation for all candidates and maintains the credibility of the university's admissions process. An incorrect approach would be to assume that any form of shared notes or discussion about exam content before the exam is acceptable, even if the intention is to help a friend understand. This fails to acknowledge that such actions can lead to the direct or indirect transfer of answers or methods, thereby compromising the individual assessment of each candidate. Another incorrect approach is to ignore suspected instances of academic dishonesty, believing it is not the responsibility of other students to report such behavior. This passive stance allows for the erosion of academic standards and can disadvantage honest candidates. Furthermore, an incorrect approach is to rationalize that everyone does it, or that the exam is too hard to warrant strict adherence to rules. Such justifications disregard the explicit regulations and ethical obligations of all participants in the examination process. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's academic integrity policy. When faced with ambiguity, it is always best to err on the side of caution and adhere strictly to the stated rules. If unsure about the permissibility of a particular action, seeking clarification from exam proctors or university officials beforehand is the most responsible course of action. In cases where academic misconduct is suspected, reporting it through the appropriate channels, as outlined by the university, is an ethical imperative to uphold the integrity of the examination. Question 5. System analysis indicates that during the review of Najah National University entrance examination papers, a pattern of identical phrasing and unique conceptual errors has been observed across multiple submissions for a specific essay question. What is the most appropriate and ethically sound approach for the examination committee to take in this situation, strictly adhering to the university's entrance exam regulations? Option A. Conduct a detailed comparative analysis of the suspect submissions to identify the extent and nature of the similarities, looking for verbatim copying or identical unique errors, and then follow the university's established protocol for investigating potential academic misconduct. Option B. Immediately disqualify all candidates whose submissions exhibit any degree of similarity, regardless of the nature or extent of the overlap. Option C. Focus solely on the overall quality of the essays, disregarding any observed similarities in phrasing or errors, to ensure a fair assessment of each student's knowledge. Option D. Assume that the similarities are coincidental, as students may have studied similar materials, and proceed with grading all papers without further investigation. The correct answer is A. Conduct a detailed comparative analysis of the suspect submissions to identify the extent and nature of the similarities, looking for verbatim copying or identical unique errors, and then follow the university's established protocol for investigating potential academic misconduct. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to academic integrity and the ethical responsibilities of students within the Najah National University's entrance examination framework. The core difficulty lies in balancing the pursuit of academic success with adherence to the university's strict guidelines against academic misconduct. Students are expected to demonstrate their knowledge and abilities independently, and any deviation from these principles undermines the fairness and validity of the examination process. Careful judgment is required to identify and address potential breaches of academic integrity without resorting to unfair accusations or overlooking genuine instances of misconduct. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective review of the submitted work, focusing on identifying patterns or similarities that strongly suggest unauthorized collaboration or the use of external aids, as prohibited by the Najah National University's entrance exam regulations. This approach aligns with the university's commitment to academic honesty and ensures that all candidates are evaluated on their own merits. Specifically, the university's guidelines on academic integrity, which are implicitly part of the entrance exam framework, prohibit plagiarism and any form of cheating. Therefore, a systematic comparison of answers to detect verbatim copying or identical conceptual errors is the most appropriate and ethically sound method to uphold these standards. An incorrect approach would be to immediately dismiss the candidate based on a single, minor similarity without further investigation. This fails to acknowledge that some overlap in answers, especially on common knowledge questions or standard problem-solving techniques, can occur naturally. Such an approach lacks due diligence and could lead to an unjust outcome, potentially penalizing a student who has genuinely understood the material. Another incorrect approach is to ignore potential similarities altogether, assuming good faith from all candidates. This directly contravenes the university's responsibility to maintain a fair and rigorous examination process. By failing to investigate suspicious patterns, the university risks allowing academic dishonesty to go unchecked, devaluing the achievements of honest students and the reputation of the institution. A further incorrect approach would be to rely on anecdotal evidence or personal assumptions about a student's capabilities rather than objective data. The Najah National University's entrance exam framework emphasizes objective assessment. Decisions regarding academic integrity must be based on verifiable evidence derived from the examination materials themselves, not on subjective impressions or hearsay. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Understand and internalize the specific academic integrity policies and regulations of a Najah National University relevant to entrance examinations. 2. Establish clear criteria for identifying potential academic misconduct, focusing on objective indicators within the submitted work. 3. Conduct a thorough and impartial review of all suspect submissions, comparing them against each other and against any permissible reference materials. 4. Document all findings meticulously, noting specific similarities, patterns, or deviations from expected independent work. 5. If evidence of misconduct is found, follow the established university procedures for reporting and addressing such issues, ensuring the student has an opportunity to respond. 6. Prioritize fairness, objectivity, and adherence to the university's regulatory framework in all decisions. Question 6. System analysis indicates that a prospective student preparing for the Najah National University entrance exam has encountered information about the examination procedures from a different university's entrance test. This information discusses general principles of academic integrity applicable to most university exams. The student is unsure whether these general principles are sufficient or if they need to find specific regulations for the Najah National University entrance exam. Which approach best ensures compliance with the exam's requirements? Option A. Consulting with students who have previously taken entrance exams at other universities to understand their experiences and common practices. Option B. Relying on the general principles of academic integrity encountered, assuming they are universally applicable to all university entrance exams. Option C. Applying common sense and general knowledge about academic honesty without referring to any specific exam documentation. Option D. Seeking out and strictly adhering to the specific regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines explicitly provided for the Najah National University entrance exam. The correct answer is B. Relying on the general principles of academic integrity encountered, assuming they are universally applicable to all university entrance exams. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge for university students applying for entrance exams, ensuring adherence to specific institutional regulations and guidelines. The Najah National University entrance exam has its own defined framework, and understanding and applying this framework correctly is paramount. The professional challenge lies in accurately interpreting and applying the exam's specific rules, particularly when faced with potential ambiguities, or when a student might be tempted to rely on general knowledge or external information that is not permitted. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between permissible and impermissible actions or knowledge. The correct approach involves strictly adhering to the Najah National University entrance exam's regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines. This means understanding that the exam's jurisdiction is exclusive and that no external or generic regulatory information is applicable. The justification for this approach is rooted in academic integrity and the principle of fairness. By following only the specified rules, candidates ensure a level playing field and demonstrate their ability to operate within defined parameters, a crucial skill for academic and professional success. This approach directly aligns with the exam's objective of assessing a candidate's understanding of its specific context. An incorrect approach would be to incorporate knowledge or principles from other university entrance exams or general academic regulations. This fails because it violates the strict jurisdiction requirement of the Najah National University entrance exam. The exam explicitly mandates adherence to its own framework, and deviating from this demonstrates a lack of attention to detail and an inability to follow specific instructions, which are critical for academic performance. Relying on external regulations would lead to an inaccurate understanding of the exam's expectations and could result in disqualification or incorrect answers. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that common or widely accepted academic practices apply without verifying their relevance to the Najah National University entrance exam. This is flawed because the exam's rules are specific and may differ significantly from general academic norms. The failure here is in not recognizing the unique jurisdiction and the need for precise compliance. A professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a systematic review of all provided instructions and guidelines for the specific task or examination. It requires active verification of the scope of the rules and a conscious effort to exclude any information or assumptions from other contexts. Professionals should prioritize understanding the explicit requirements of the governing body, in this case, Najah National University, and base their actions solely on that defined framework. Question 7. The audit findings indicate a pattern of inconsistent application of grading rubrics across multiple departments, potentially impacting the fairness of student assessments and the overall academic standing of Najah National University. Which of the following represents the most appropriate initial response to these findings? Option A. Initiate a comprehensive review of grading policies and their implementation across all departments, involving faculty and academic leadership to identify root causes and develop standardized best practices. Option B. Immediately issue a directive to all faculty members to strictly adhere to existing grading rubrics with a warning of disciplinary action for noncompliance. Option C. Focus on addressing the departments with the most significant reported inconsistencies, implementing targeted training for their faculty on grading standards. Option D. Request a meeting with the auditors to challenge the validity of their findings and request a re-evaluation of the audit scope. The correct answer is A. Initiate a comprehensive review of grading policies and their implementation across all departments, involving faculty and academic leadership to identify root causes and develop standardized best practices. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential conflict between the university's academic integrity policies and the practical realities of student performance and faculty workload. The auditor's findings, if accurate, suggest a systemic issue that could undermine the credibility of the university's assessment processes. Navigating this requires a careful balance of upholding academic standards, ensuring fairness to students, and supporting faculty in their roles. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective, and evidence-based investigation into the audit findings. This means gathering all relevant documentation, interviewing key stakeholders, faculty, department heads, academic affairs, and comparing current practices against established university regulations and guidelines for grading and academic integrity. The justification for this approach lies in Najah National University's commitment to academic excellence and ethical conduct, as outlined in its official regulations and student handbooks. A systematic review ensures that any identified deviations from policy are understood in context and addressed appropriately, protecting the integrity of the academic program and the value of degrees awarded. This aligns with the university's overarching mission to provide quality education and maintain high standards. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the audit findings without proper investigation. This fails to acknowledge the potential for systemic issues and neglects the university's responsibility to uphold its own policies. It could lead to a continuation of problematic practices, eroding trust in the university's assessment system. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately implement punitive measures against faculty without a fair and thorough review. This disregards due process and could create a climate of fear and distrust, hindering open communication and collaboration. Furthermore, focusing solely on superficial changes without addressing the root causes identified by the audit would be an ineffective and ultimately detrimental approach, failing to resolve the underlying issues and potentially leading to recurring problems. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a commitment to transparency, fairness, and adherence to established university policies. Professionals should first seek to understand the full scope and nature of the findings. This involves gathering information, analyzing evidence, and consulting relevant regulations. Next, they should engage in objective assessment, considering all perspectives and potential impacts. Finally, they should formulate and implement solutions that are consistent with the university's mission and ethical standards, ensuring accountability and continuous improvement. Question 8. Governance review demonstrates that a candidate for the Najah National University entrance exam who has not met the minimum score requirement in a critical subject area has been recommended for admission by a senior faculty member who is a personal acquaintance. The admissions committee is tasked with making the final decision. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action? Strictly adhering to the Najah National University entrance exam's regulatory framework and guidelines. Option A. Approve the candidate's admission as requested by the senior faculty member, given their influence and the personal connection to avoid potential conflict. Option B. Grant the candidate a special exemption from the minimum score requirement in the critical subject area as a gesture of goodwill and proceed with their admission. Option C. Conduct a thorough review of the candidate's entire application, including their performance in all subjects and any relevant extenuating circumstances, to determine if they meet the overall admission profile as defined by the university's entrance exam regulations, and make a decision based solely on these established criteria. Option D. Inform the senior faculty member that the candidate does not meet the requirements and decline to consider the application further, without a detailed review of the candidate's full profile. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough review of the candidate's entire application, including their performance in all subjects and any relevant extenuating circumstances, to determine if they meet the overall admission profile as defined by the university's entrance exam regulations, and make a decision based solely on these established criteria. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in academic institutions where the integrity of the admission process is paramount. The challenge lies in balancing the need to uphold strict admission criteria with potential external pressures or requests that might seek to bypass these established procedures. Maintaining fairness, transparency, and adherence to a Najah National University's specific entrance exam regulations is critical to the institution's reputation and the credibility of its student body. The pressure to accommodate a specific candidate, even if they do not fully meet the established criteria, creates an ethical dilemma that requires careful consideration of university policy and the principles of equitable assessment. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective review of the candidate's application against the published admission criteria for the Najah National University entrance exam. This approach is correct because it strictly adheres to the regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines specified for the exam. It prioritizes fairness and equal opportunity for all applicants by ensuring that decisions are based solely on merit and established requirements, as mandated by the university's entrance examination regulations. This upholds the integrity of the admission process and prevents any perception of favoritism or undue influence. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately approving the candidate's admission based on the dean's request, without a formal review of their qualifications against the entrance exam criteria. This fails to comply with the university's established admission regulations and bypasses the objective assessment process. It introduces an element of bias and undermines the principle of merit-based selection, potentially leading to the admission of underqualified students and damaging the university's academic standards. Another incorrect approach is to grant a special exemption for the candidate without a clear, documented policy or precedent within the Najah National University entrance exam framework that allows for such exemptions. This action would be arbitrary and inconsistent with the established rules, creating a loophole that could be exploited by others. It violates the principle of equal treatment and the regulatory requirement to follow defined procedures. A further incorrect approach is to defer the decision indefinitely or to ignore the request altogether. While avoiding a potentially difficult decision, this fails to address the situation professionally and in accordance with university procedures. It can lead to uncertainty for the candidate and the dean, and it does not resolve the issue within the established regulatory framework. A proper response requires engagement with the process, even if the outcome is a rejection based on the criteria. Professional reasoning. Professionals in academic admissions must operate within a defined set of rules and ethical guidelines. When faced with requests that deviate from these, the decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying the relevant regulations and policies governing the situation, in this case, and Najah National University entrance exam regulations. 2. Objectively assessing the facts of the case against these regulations. 3. Consulting with relevant authorities or committees if ambiguity exists or if a formal exception process is outlined in the regulations. 4. Documenting the decision-making process and the rationale behind the final decision. 5. Communicating the decision clearly and professionally to all involved parties. The primary focus must always be on upholding the integrity and fairness of the established procedures. Question 9. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of technical glitches during the online administration of the Najah National University entrance exam, with a high potential impact on candidate performance and overall exam fairness. Which of the following represents the most appropriate response to mitigate this identified risk? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive pilot test of the online platform with a diverse group of students to identify and resolve potential technical issues before the actual exam, and have a dedicated technical support team available during the exam to provide immediate assistance. Option B. Postpone the exam indefinitely until a completely flawless and guaranteed to be uninterrupted online platform can be secured, regardless of the impact on the admissions timeline. Option C. Advise all candidates to ensure they have a stable internet connection and a reliable device, and inform them that the university is not responsible for any technical disruptions. Option D. Implement a mandatory, high-stakes in-person examination for all candidates to completely eliminate the risk of online technical issues, even if it significantly increases logistical challenges and costs. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive pilot test of the online platform with a diverse group of students to identify and resolve potential technical issues before the actual exam, and have a dedicated technical support team available during the exam to provide immediate assistance. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the practicalities of managing student admissions under pressure. The entrance exam is a critical gatekeeper, and ensuring its fairness and validity is paramount. Misinterpreting or misapplying the risk matrix can lead to either admitting unqualified students, thereby compromising academic standards, or unfairly excluding deserving candidates, potentially leading to reputational damage and appeals. The core challenge lies in making a judgment call that upholds the spirit of the examination regulations while acknowledging the nuances of risk assessment. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the identified risks and their potential impact on the integrity of the entrance examination process. This includes considering the likelihood of each risk occurring and the severity of its consequences. Based on this assessment, the university should implement a tiered response strategy. For high-impact, high-likelihood risks, immediate and robust mitigation measures are essential, such as enhanced proctoring or stricter verification protocols. For lower-impact or lower-likelihood risks, a monitoring approach might suffice, with contingency plans in place. This approach aligns with the principles of good governance and risk management expected of educational institutions, ensuring that resources are allocated effectively to protect the examination's credibility. The Najah National University entrance exam regulations likely emphasize fairness, transparency, and the maintenance of academic standards, all of which are supported by a systematic and evidence-based risk management strategy. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the risk matrix entirely due to its complexity or perceived inconvenience. This failure to engage with the risk assessment process directly contravenes the regulatory expectation of proactive risk management. It suggests a disregard for potential threats to the examination's integrity, which could lead to breaches of fairness and potentially compromise the validity of the admissions process. Another incorrect approach would be to implement overly stringent measures for all identified risks, regardless of their assessed likelihood or impact. This overreaction, while seemingly cautious, can be inefficient, resource-intensive, and may create unnecessary barriers for legitimate applicants. It fails to demonstrate a nuanced understanding of risk assessment and could lead to a perception of unfairness or an overly bureaucratic admissions process, potentially violating the spirit of accessibility and opportunity that university entrance exams are meant to embody. A further incorrect approach would be to focus solely on the financial implications of the risks without adequately considering their impact on academic standards and fairness. While financial prudence is important, The primary objective of an entrance examination is to select qualified candidates based on merit. Prioritizing cost saving over the integrity of the selection process would be a significant ethical and regulatory failure. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, understand the specific regulatory framework governing the examination, in this case, and Najah National University's entrance exam guidelines. Second, thoroughly analyze the risk matrix, understanding the nature of each identified risk and its potential consequences. Third, evaluate the proposed mitigation strategies against the identified risks, considering their effectiveness, feasibility, and alignment with regulatory and ethical principles. Fourth, consult with relevant stakeholders, such as academic committees or admissions officers, to gather diverse perspectives. Finally, document the decision-making process and the rationale behind the chosen course of action, ensuring transparency and accountability. Question 10. System analysis indicates that a prospective student, having just completed the Najah National University entrance exam, contacts the admissions office claiming they made a significant error in a specific section and requests to be provided with the correct answers to fix their submission before official grading. Option A. Inform the student that the exam submission is final and cannot be altered. Explain the university's policy on academic integrity and the consequences of attempting to manipulate exam results, and direct them to the university's academic advising services for general study support. Option B. Provide the student with the correct answers for the section they indicated, allowing them to correct their submission to ensure a fair chance. Option C. Advise the student to withdraw their application and reapply for the next academic year, suggesting they use this time to better prepare. Option D. Immediately report the student to the university's disciplinary committee for attempting to commit academic fraud. The correct answer is A. Inform the student that the exam submission is final and cannot be altered. Explain the university's policy on academic integrity and the consequences of attempting to manipulate exam results, and direct them to the university's academic advising services for general study support. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's academic integrity policies and the student's request, which borders on academic misconduct. The entrance exam framework for Najah National University mandates strict adherence to academic honesty and fairness. Therefore, any action that compromises this principle is professionally unacceptable. The correct approach involves upholding the university's established procedures for handling academic integrity concerns. This means clearly communicating the university's policy on plagiarism and academic misconduct to the student, explaining the consequences of such actions, and directing them to the appropriate university channels for academic support or appeals if they believe their work was unfairly assessed. This aligns with the ethical obligation to maintain a fair and honest academic environment, as implicitly required by any university entrance examination process designed to select candidates based on merit. The regulatory framework for university entrance exams, even if not explicitly detailed here, universally prioritizes integrity and fairness. An incorrect approach would be to directly provide the student with answers or guidance that facilitates cheating. This directly violates the principles of academic integrity and the spirit of a competitive entrance examination. It undermines the validity of the exam process and creates an unfair advantage for the student, potentially leading to the admission of unqualified candidates. This action would be a severe ethical breach and likely contravene the implicit regulations governing the integrity of university admissions. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the student's request without any response. Not actively facilitating cheating, this passive stance fails to address a potential breach of academic integrity and misses an opportunity to educate the student on university policies. It also neglects the professional responsibility to uphold the standards of the examination process. A third incorrect approach would be to report the student to the authorities without first attempting to understand the context or providing an opportunity for the student to clarify their intentions or seek legitimate academic assistance. While reporting misconduct is sometimes necessary, an immediate escalation without due process or communication can be seen as overly punitive and may not align with the university's internal disciplinary procedures. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Recognizing the ethical and regulatory implications of the request. 2. Consulting the university's official policies on academic integrity and admissions. 3. Communicating clearly and professionally with the student, explaining policies and consequences. 4. Directing the student to appropriate university resources for academic support or grievance procedures. 5. Escalating the matter through official channels only if the student persists in seeking to violate academic integrity or if the initial communication is insufficient. Question 11. The efficiency study reveals that a significant portion of research funding is being allocated to projects led by faculty members who also sit on the committee responsible for approving such allocations. This creates a potential conflict of interest. According to Najah National University's internal regulations on academic integrity and resource management, what is the most appropriate course of action for the university administration? Option A. The faculty members with potential conflicts of interest should be allowed to unilaterally decide on the allocation of funds for their own projects to expedite the process. Option B. The university administration should immediately halt all research funding allocations until a new, independent committee can be formed to review all pending proposals. Option C. Faculty members with potential conflicts of interest should recuse themselves from the decision-making process for the specific projects in question, and the remaining committee members should proceed with the allocation based on merit, following established university guidelines. Option D. The faculty members with potential conflicts of interest should continue to participate in the allocation process, as their expertise is crucial for evaluating the research proposals effectively. Correct answer is C. The faculty members with potential conflicts of interest should recuse themselves from the decision-making process for the specific projects in question, and the remaining committee members should proceed with the allocation based on merit, following established university guidelines. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a potential conflict of interest regarding the allocation of university resources for research projects. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair resource distribution with the personal interests of faculty members. Careful judgment is needed to ensure that decisions are perceived as impartial and serve the best interests of the university and its students, adhering strictly to Najah National University's internal regulations and ethical guidelines for faculty conduct. The correct approach involves a transparent disclosure of the potential conflict of interest to the relevant university committee or authority responsible for resource allocation. This committee, operating under Najah National University's established policies, would then assess the situation and make an objective decision on resource allocation, potentially recusing the conflicted faculty member from the decision-making process. This upholds the principle of fairness and prevents undue influence, aligning with the university's commitment to ethical governance and academic excellence as outlined in its internal regulations. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the resource allocation without disclosing the potential conflict. This failure to disclose violates the university's ethical guidelines on transparency and conflicts of interest, potentially leading to biased decisions that disadvantage other deserving projects and undermine trust in the university's administrative processes. Another incorrect approach is to allow the faculty member with the conflict to unilaterally decide on the resource allocation. This bypasses the established governance structure and directly contravenes the university's policies on impartial decision-making and conflict resolution, creating an environment ripe for favoritism and a breach of academic integrity. A further incorrect approach is to ignore the efficiency study's findings altogether, assuming no conflict exists without proper investigation. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for potential ethical breaches, failing to uphold the university's responsibility to ensure fair and equitable resource management. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a proactive identification of potential conflicts of interest, followed by immediate and transparent disclosure to the appropriate oversight body. This body should then follow established university procedures for conflict assessment and resolution, ensuring that all decisions are made impartially and in accordance with the university's regulatory framework and ethical standards. Question 12. Risk assessment procedures indicate a student applying for the Najah National University entrance exam has requested a modified examination format due to a recently diagnosed learning difficulty, but has not provided any official documentation to support this request. The admissions committee is considering how to proceed, Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Advise the student that the university's entrance exam does not offer any special accommodations, and they must take the exam in its standard format. Option B. Suggest the student defer their application to the next examination cycle, allowing them time to gather the required documentation. Option C. Immediately grant the student's request for a modified examination format to ensure fairness and avoid any potential perception of discrimination. Option D. Politely inform the student that official documentation is required to process any requests for examination accommodations, and provide them with clear instructions on how to obtain and submit the necessary supporting evidence according to university policy. The correct answer is D. Politely inform the student that official documentation is required to process any requests for examination accommodations, and provide them with clear instructions on how to obtain and submit the necessary supporting evidence according to university policy. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's perceived academic need and the university's established procedures for academic integrity and resource allocation. The student's request, while seemingly straightforward, touches upon the university's responsibility to maintain fair assessment practices and prevent academic misconduct. Careful judgment is required to balance supporting student learning with upholding institutional standards. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the student's request against a Najah National University's official policies regarding examination accommodations and academic integrity. This approach is correct because it adheres strictly to the established regulatory framework of the university. Specifically, it aligns with the university's commitment to fair and equitable assessment, ensuring that any accommodations granted are documented, justified, and applied consistently. By consulting the official student handbook and relevant academic regulations, the admissions committee can determine if the student's situation meets the criteria for special consideration, thereby upholding ethical principles of fairness and transparency. An incorrect approach would be to immediately grant the student's request without proper verification. This fails to adhere to the university's established procedures for handling such requests, potentially setting a precedent for future students that circumvents established protocols. It also risks compromising the integrity of the entrance examination process by allowing for ad hoc accommodations that may not be universally applicable or justifiable. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the student's request outright without any investigation. This demonstrates a lack of empathy and fails to consider the possibility of legitimate extenuating circumstances that may warrant accommodation. Ethically, universities have a responsibility to provide reasonable support to students facing genuine challenges, and a blanket refusal without due process is unprofessional and potentially discriminatory. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. First, understanding the student's request and the underlying reasons. Second, consulting the relevant institutional policies and guidelines. Third, gathering any necessary supporting documentation. And finally, making a decision based on a fair and objective application of the university's regulations. This ensures that decisions are not only procedurally sound, but also ethically defensible and in line with the university's mission. Question 13. System analysis indicates that a credible tip has been received regarding a potential breach of examination regulations by an applicant during the Najah National University entrance exam. The tip suggests the applicant may have accessed unauthorized materials. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the examination administrator? Option A. Immediately inform the applicant of the allegation and request a written explanation before proceeding with any further investigation. Option B. Initiate a formal, documented investigation into the allegation, gathering all available evidence and consulting the university's examination regulations, while maintaining confidentiality. Option C. Disqualify the applicant from the examination based on the tip alone and inform them of their expulsion. Option D. Discuss the tip with other examination supervisors to gauge their opinions on the applicant's behavior during the exam. The correct answer is A. Immediately inform the applicant of the allegation and request a written explanation before proceeding with any further investigation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to academic integrity and the proper handling of potential misconduct within the context of Najah National University's entrance examination regulations. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need to uphold the university's standards for fair and honest assessment with the ethical obligation to investigate and address allegations of cheating appropriately, without prejudicing the applicant. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any action taken is based on verified facts and adheres strictly to the established procedures outlined by the university. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented investigation process that is initiated upon receiving credible information. This process should prioritize gathering evidence, providing the applicant with an opportunity to respond to any allegations, and then making a decision based on the findings and in accordance with the Najah National University's examination policies. This upholds the principle of due process and ensures that decisions are fair and defensible, aligning with the university's commitment to academic integrity and its regulatory framework for entrance examinations. An incorrect approach would be to immediately disqualify the applicant based solely on an unsubstantiated rumor. This fails to adhere to the university's procedural requirements for investigating allegations of misconduct and violates the applicant's right to a fair hearing. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the allegation, which undermines the integrity of the examination process and fails to uphold the university's standards. Finally, discussing the allegation with other applicants or unauthorized personnel would constitute a breach of confidentiality and professional ethics, potentially damaging the reputation of the university and the individuals involved. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with acknowledging the allegation and assessing its credibility. The next step is to consult the relevant and Najah National University examination regulations and internal policies to determine the prescribed procedure for handling such matters. This should be followed by a thorough, impartial investigation, ensuring all parties are treated fairly and that evidence is meticulously collected and reviewed. The final decision must be documented and communicated according to university guidelines. Question 14. System analysis indicates that during the Najah National University entrance exam, a fellow candidate is observed discreetly looking at notes concealed within their sleeve. As a student committed to academic integrity, what is the most appropriate course of action according to the university's examination guidelines? Option A. Discuss the observation with other students during a break. Option B. Directly confront the fellow candidate about their actions. Option C. Discreetly inform the invigilator or examination supervisor about the observed behavior. Option D. Ignore the situation to avoid potential conflict or repercussions. The correct answer is C. Discreetly inform the invigilator or examination supervisor about the observed behavior. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to academic integrity and the ethical responsibilities of students within the Najah National University's examination framework. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need to uphold the university's standards against potential pressure or misunderstanding from a peer. Careful judgment is required to address the situation without compromising the integrity of the examination process or unfairly disadvantaging another student. The correct approach involves discreetly reporting the observed behavior to the invigilator or examination authority. This upholds the university's regulatory framework for entrance exams, which implicitly or explicitly prohibits academic dishonesty. By informing the appropriate personnel, the student acts as a responsible member of the academic community, ensuring a fair assessment for all candidates. This aligns with the ethical principle of academic integrity, which is fundamental to the credibility of any educational institution. The university's guidelines for entrance exams are designed to ensure a level playing field, and reporting such an incident is a direct application of these principles. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the situation. This failure to act directly undermines the examination regulations and tacitly condones academic misconduct. It creates an unfair advantage for the student engaging in the prohibited behavior and disadvantages honest candidates. Ethically, it violates the principle of fairness and contributes to an environment where academic standards are not upheld. Another incorrect approach would be to directly confront the student. While seemingly proactive, this can escalate the situation, disrupt the examination environment for other candidates, and potentially lead to personal conflict. It bypasses the established university procedures for handling such matters, which are designed to be impartial and thorough. Furthermore, it places the confronting student in a position of authority they do not possess, potentially leading to misjudgment or an inappropriate resolution. A third incorrect approach would be to discuss the observation with other students. This constitutes gossip and can create unnecessary anxiety and suspicion among candidates. It also risks spreading misinformation and can be seen as a breach of confidentiality regarding the examination process. The university's regulations typically emphasize maintaining a professional and focused atmosphere during exams, and such discussions are counterproductive to this goal. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Recognizing the potential violation of university regulations. 2. Prioritizing the integrity of the examination process and fairness to all candidates. 3. Adhering to established university procedures for reporting academic misconduct. 4. Acting discreetly and responsibly to avoid disruption. 5. Trusting the designated authorities to investigate and act appropriately. Question 15. The monitoring system demonstrates a significant increase in the time students spend on online learning platforms, but also a decrease in their participation in live virtual class sessions. Which approach best reflects a Najah National University's commitment to comprehensive student support and academic integrity? Option A. Focus solely on the decrease in live session participation as a sign of academic decline and recommend a review of student enrollment status based on this single metric. Option B. Conclude that students are disengaging from formal instruction and are prioritizing self-directed, potentially less effective learning methods, and recommend immediate disciplinary action for reduced live session attendance. Option C. Highlight the increase in platform time as evidence of students actively seeking out additional learning resources, and disregard the decrease in live session participation as a minor deviation from expected behavior. Option D. Report the increase in platform time as a direct indicator of improved student engagement and learning, while noting the decrease in live session participation as a potential issue requiring further investigation without immediate judgment. Correct answer is D. Report the increase in platform time as a direct indicator of improved student engagement and learning, while noting the decrease in live session participation as a potential issue requiring further investigation without immediate judgment. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to balance the need for accurate reporting with the potential for misinterpretation or misuse of information. The monitoring system's output, while factual, may not fully capture the nuances of student engagement or academic progress. Therefore, the professional must exercise judgment in how this data is presented and contextualized to avoid drawing premature or inaccurate conclusions. The correct approach involves presenting the monitoring system's findings alongside qualitative data and contextual information. This ensures a comprehensive understanding of student performance, acknowledging that quantitative data alone can be misleading. Specifically, referencing a Najah National University's internal guidelines on student assessment and academic integrity would be paramount. These guidelines likely emphasize a holistic view of student progress, incorporating factors beyond simple monitoring system outputs. Ethical considerations also dictate that any reporting should be fair, objective, and avoid stigmatizing students based on potentially incomplete data. An incorrect approach would be to solely rely on the monitoring system's raw data without further analysis or context. This fails to meet the university's likely standards for academic reporting, which would expect a more nuanced and considered evaluation. Such an approach could lead to unfair judgments about student engagement or academic standing, potentially violating principles of fairness and due process as outlined in university regulations. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the monitoring system's data entirely, assuming it is inherently flawed or irrelevant. This disregards a potentially valuable source of information that, when properly interpreted, could highlight areas needing support or intervention. Failing to consider all available relevant data, as might be implicitly or explicitly required by university policy on academic oversight, represents a failure in professional diligence. A third incorrect approach would be to selectively present data from the monitoring system that supports a preconceived notion about student performance, while omitting data that contradicts it. This constitutes a biased and unethical manipulation of information, directly contravening principles of academic honesty and objective reporting, expected by a Najah National University. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Understanding the purpose of the monitoring system and its limitations. 2. Consulting relevant university policies and guidelines regarding student assessment and reporting. 3. Gathering and integrating diverse data sources, both quantitative and qualitative. 4. Analyzing the data critically and objectively. 5. Presenting findings in a clear, contextualized, and fair manner, avoiding unsubstantiated conclusions. Question 16. System analysis indicates that a prospective student preparing for the Najah National University entrance exam has approached a university staff member for advice, specifically asking for hints about the types of questions that will be asked and which topics will be most heavily weighted. The staff member is aware of the general curriculum, but has not been privy to any specific exam content or advance notice of question themes. What is the most appropriate course of action for the university staff member to ensure adherence to the Najah National University's entrance examination regulations and ethical standards? Option A. Advise the student to focus on reviewing the official syllabus and utilize the preparatory materials provided by the university, emphasizing that all candidates are assessed on the same standardized content. Option B. Share general insights into the difficulty level of the exam and suggest that the student prioritize subjects they are personally strong in, as this often correlates with success. Option C. Offer to provide the student with a few sample questions that are representative of the exam's format and style, explaining that this is a common practice for preparation. Option D. Provide the student with a list of topics that have historically been emphasized in previous entrance exams, suggesting these are likely to be important again. The correct answer is A. Advise the student to focus on reviewing the official syllabus and utilize the preparatory materials provided by the university, emphasizing that all candidates are assessed on the same standardized content. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in academic settings where students might seek an unfair advantage. Professional challenge lies in upholding the integrity of the Najah National University entrance examination process while ensuring fairness to all applicants. This requires a careful balance between assisting students and preventing academic misconduct. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to the established examination guidelines and policies of a Najah National University. This means providing only officially sanctioned preparatory materials and information. The regulatory framework for university entrance exams, as stipulated by a Najah National University, mandates that all candidates must be assessed on a level playing field, free from any form of undue advantage. Providing unauthorized or advanced information about the exam content would violate this principle and constitute academic dishonesty, undermining the credibility of the examination. Ethical considerations also demand impartiality and fairness to all applicants. An incorrect approach would be to provide specific examples of potential exam questions, or to offer detailed explanations of topics that are known to be heavily emphasized in the upcoming exam, even if framed as general study advice. This action directly breaches the university's regulations by giving preferential treatment and compromising the integrity of the assessment. Creates an unfair advantage for those receiving such information, violating the principle of equal opportunity. Another incorrect approach would be to suggest that the student focus on specific areas that are likely to appear based on informal observations or past trends, without official confirmation. While seemingly helpful, this can still lead to an unfair advantage if these likely areas are not part of the officially disseminated syllabus or preparation guidelines. It blurs the line between legitimate preparation and the dissemination of privileged information, potentially leading to accusations of favoritism or insider knowledge. The professional decision-making process for such situations involves a clear understanding of the university's examination policies and ethical codes. When faced with a request that could compromise these standards, a professional should 1. Consult the official and Najah National University guidelines for entrance examinations. 2. Identify the core principle being tested, e.g., fairness, integrity, equal opportunity. 3. Decline any request that deviates from official procedures or could lead to an unfair advantage. 4. Redirect the student to official resources and approved preparation materials. 5. Maintain strict confidentiality regarding any information that is not publicly available or officially sanctioned. Question 17. Upon reviewing the guidelines for the Najah National University entrance exam, a prospective student is concerned about the difficulty of the mathematics section and the pressure to secure a high score. The student considers several methods to improve their chances of success. Which of the following actions best upholds the principles of academic integrity as expected by the university? Option A. Forming a study group with other applicants with the explicit goal of pooling information to predict and prepare for exact exam questions. Option B. Diligently studying all prescribed syllabus topics using official textbooks and university-provided practice materials, focusing on understanding the underlying concepts. Option C. Contacting a friend who recently passed the exam to obtain specific questions and answers from their experience. Option D. Purchasing a set of guaranteed success study notes from an online vendor that claims to have insider information on the exam content. The correct answer is B. Diligently studying all prescribed syllabus topics using official textbooks and university-provided practice materials, focusing on understanding the underlying concepts. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic success and the university's commitment to academic integrity. The pressure to perform well on a crucial entrance exam can lead individuals to consider unethical shortcuts. Therefore, careful judgment is required to uphold ethical standards and the university's regulations. The correct approach involves the student independently preparing for the exam, utilizing only approved study materials and resources. This aligns directly with the principles of academic integrity and the explicit guidelines of Najah National University's entrance exam regulations, which prohibit any form of external assistance or unauthorized materials. Adhering to these rules ensures a fair assessment of the student's knowledge and abilities, fostering a culture of honesty within the university. An incorrect approach would be to seek assistance from a current student who has already taken the exam. This constitutes academic dishonesty by attempting to gain an unfair advantage through unauthorized information sharing, violating the spirit and letter of the exam regulations. Such an action undermines the validity of the examination process and disrespects the efforts of other candidates. Another incorrect approach is to purchase study guides that claim to contain actual past exam questions. This is a form of academic misconduct, as it implies an attempt to circumvent the intended learning process and obtain proprietary information. Universities typically have strict policies against the unauthorized acquisition and use of exam materials, and engaging in such practices would be a serious breach of trust and academic integrity. A further incorrect approach is to collaborate with other prospective students to create a shared study bank of potential exam topics. While collaboration in study groups is often encouraged, if the intent is to specifically replicate or anticipate exam content in a way that bypasses the university's assessment design, it can cross the line into academic dishonesty. The university's regulations are designed to assess individual preparedness, and such coordinated efforts to beat the test, rather than genuinely learn, can be seen as a violation. The professional decision-making process for such situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's academic integrity policies and ethical guidelines. When faced with pressure or temptation, a professional should always prioritize adherence to established rules and principles. This involves self-reflection on the potential consequences of unethical actions, both for oneself and for the institution. If in doubt, seeking clarification from university authorities or academic advisors is a responsible step. The ultimate goal is to ensure that all actions are transparent, fair, and in accordance with the expected standards of conduct. Question 18. Stakeholder feedback indicates that a fellow student, facing significant pressure to perform well on the upcoming Najah National University entrance exam, has approached you with a proposition to share leaked exam questions they claim to have obtained. They believe this will guarantee their admission. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound course of action? Option A. Accept the offer and use the leaked questions to help your friend prepare, believing that everyone is trying to get ahead. Option B. Advise the student on how to best utilize the leaked questions to maximize their chances of success on the exam. Option C. Ignore the student's request and pretend you never heard about it, as it is not your direct responsibility. Option D. Politely decline the offer, explain that you cannot be involved in anything that compromises the integrity of the exam, and report the incident to the university's Academic Integrity Office. The correct answer is D. Politely decline the offer, explain that you cannot be involved in anything that compromises the integrity of the exam, and report the incident to the university's Academic Integrity Office. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic success and the university's commitment to academic integrity. The pressure to perform well on a crucial entrance exam, coupled with the availability of potentially unfair advantages, creates an ethical dilemma requiring careful judgment. The university's reputation and the fairness of the admissions process are at stake. The correct approach involves upholding the principles of academic integrity and fairness as enshrined in Najah National University's regulations and ethical guidelines. This means refusing to engage with or disseminate any information that could compromise the integrity of the entrance exam. Specifically, it requires reporting the incident to the appropriate university authorities, such as the Examination Board or Academic Integrity Office, to ensure a thorough investigation and appropriate action. This aligns with the university's responsibility to maintain a fair and equitable admissions process for all prospective students. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the student's request or to dismiss the information without proper reporting. This failure to act would implicitly condone potential academic dishonesty and undermine the credibility of the entrance exam. Another incorrect approach would be to directly assist the student in obtaining or using the leaked information. This would be a severe breach of academic integrity, violating university regulations and ethical codes, and would directly contribute to an unfair admissions process. Furthermore, engaging in such actions could lead to severe disciplinary consequences for the individual involved, including disqualification from the exam and potential academic sanctions. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical conduct and adherence to institutional policies. This involves 1. Recognizing the ethical conflict and the potential for academic misconduct. 2. Consulting relevant university regulations and ethical codes regarding academic integrity and examination procedures. 3. Prioritizing the principles of fairness, honesty, and integrity. 4. Reporting the incident through the designated channels within the university. 5. Avoiding any action that could be construed as complicity or encouragement of academic dishonesty. Question 19. Cost-benefit analysis shows that selling anonymized student data to a market research firm could generate significant revenue for a Najah National University, which could be used to improve campus facilities. However, the process of anonymization is complex, and there's a small but non-zero risk of re-identification. The university's data privacy policy emphasizes the protection of student information. What is the most ethically and legally sound course of action for the university administration? Option A. Proceed with selling the data after implementing a standard anonymization protocol, as the potential benefits outweigh the minimal risk of re-identification. Option B. Refuse to sell the data, citing the university's commitment to student privacy and the inherent risks associated with data anonymization, even if imperfect. Option C. Sell the data but obtain general consent from students during enrollment for their anonymized data to be used for research and development purposes. Option D. Share the data with the market research firm with a contractual agreement that they will not attempt to re-identify students, assuming this is sufficient protection. The correct answer is A. Proceed with selling the data after implementing a standard anonymization protocol, as the potential benefits outweigh the minimal risk of re-identification. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it pits a potentially beneficial outcome for the university against a clear ethical obligation to protect student data. The university's financial well-being is a legitimate concern, but it cannot supersede the fundamental duty of confidentiality and data privacy. The core of the dilemma lies in balancing institutional interests with individual rights and regulatory compliance. The correct approach involves prioritizing the protection of student data and adhering strictly to the university's data privacy policies and relevant Palestinian laws governing data protection. This approach is ethically sound and legally compliant because it upholds the trust placed in the university by its students. Specifically, it aligns with the principles of data minimization, purpose limitation, and consent, which are foundational to responsible data handling. By refusing to share the data without explicit, informed consent and a clear legal basis, the university demonstrates its commitment to ethical conduct and avoids potential legal repercussions and reputational damage. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with sharing the data based solely on the cost-benefit analysis. This fails to recognize that the potential financial gain does not justify a breach of privacy. Ethically, it violates the principle of non-maleficence, as unauthorized data sharing can lead to harm for students, including identity theft, discrimination, or other forms of exploitation. Legally, it would likely contravene Palestinian data protection laws, leading to fines, sanctions, and legal action. Another incorrect approach would be to share the data with a vague assurance of responsible use, without obtaining explicit consent or establishing a clear, lawful purpose. This is insufficient because it bypasses the requirement for informed consent and transparency. The responsible use promise is subjective and offers no concrete protection for the students whose data is being shared. It creates a loophole that undermines the spirit and letter of data protection regulations. A third incorrect approach would be to attempt to anonymize the data without a robust and verifiable anonymization process. True anonymization is difficult to achieve, and even seemingly anonymized data can sometimes be re-identified, especially when combined with other datasets. Relying on inadequate anonymization is a risky strategy that still exposes students to potential privacy risks and may not satisfy legal requirements for data protection. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's ethical code, data privacy policies, and applicable laws. When faced with a conflict between potential benefits and ethical/legal obligations, the default should always be to uphold the obligations. This requires consulting with legal counsel and the university's data protection officer to ensure all decisions are compliant and ethically defensible. A thorough risk assessment, focusing on the potential harm to individuals, should be conducted, and any proposed action must be transparent and based on explicit, informed consent where required. Question 20. Examination of the data shows that a substantial donation has been offered to Najah National University for a new research initiative. However, preliminary inquiries suggest the potential donor has a history of questionable business practices, and the proposed research, while potentially groundbreaking, could have significant ethical implications if not handled with extreme care and transparency. The university administration is eager to secure the funding. What is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible course of action for the university to take? Option A. Delegate the entire decision-making process to the university's finance department to expedite the acceptance of the donation and secure the funds as quickly as possible. Option B. Proceed with the research project as planned, assuming the donor's past practices are irrelevant to the academic merit of the proposed work, and focus solely on the scientific potential. Option C. Establish an independent committee to thoroughly investigate the donor's background and the ethical implications of the proposed research before making any decision on accepting the donation. Option D. Accept the donation immediately to secure the funding and address any potential ethical concerns on a case-by-case basis as they arise during the research process. The correct answer is C. Establish an independent committee to thoroughly investigate the donor's background and the ethical implications of the proposed research before making any decision on accepting the donation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate need for funding and the ethical obligation to ensure the integrity of academic research. The pressure to secure a significant donation from a potentially unethical source requires careful judgment to uphold a Najah National University's reputation and its commitment to academic honesty. The correct approach involves a thorough and independent investigation into the source of the funds and the proposed research project's alignment with ethical guidelines and university policies. This approach prioritizes due diligence and ethical considerations over immediate financial gain. Specifically, it requires the establishment of an independent committee composed of faculty members from diverse disciplines and potentially external ethics experts to review the donation proposal. This committee would assess the donor's background, the potential for conflicts of interest, and the scientific and ethical merit of the research. If the investigation reveals ethical concerns or a misalignment with academic integrity, the university must be prepared to decline the donation, even if it means foregoing significant funding. This aligns with the ethical principles of academic integrity, transparency, and responsible stewardship of university resources, as implicitly expected within the framework of university governance and research ethics. An incorrect approach would be to accept the donation without adequate scrutiny, driven by the immediate financial benefit. This failure to investigate the donor's background and the research proposal's ethical implications would violate the university's responsibility to maintain academic standards and could lead to reputational damage and compromised research outcomes. Another incorrect approach would be to proceed with the research project while downplaying or ignoring any ethical red flags raised during initial discussions. This demonstrates a lack of commitment to ethical research practices and a prioritization of funding over integrity. A third incorrect approach would be to delegate the decision-making solely to the administration without involving relevant academic stakeholders or an independent ethics review. This bypasses crucial checks and balances designed to safeguard the university's ethical standing. Professionals facing similar situations should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with identifying the ethical dilemma. This involves recognizing the competing interests and potential consequences. Next, they should gather all relevant information, including the donor's background, the proposed research, and university policies on donations and research ethics. Then, they should identify stakeholders and consider their perspectives. Evaluating potential courses of action against ethical principles and university regulations is crucial. Finally, the decision should be made and communicated transparently, with a clear rationale based on ethical considerations and institutional integrity.